You are live.
Thank you. I would like to call to order the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency Board of Directors meeting. This is going to be a Zoom conference. It's November 17th, 2020. It's shortly after 10 a.m. and we do have quorum. I would like to have a roll call, please. Mike Metzger is here. Gary Henry? Here. Hans Auer? Here. Mark Odell? Here. Stephen Thorpe? Here. Jay Churchill? Here. Dennis Rack? Here. Kelly Farrell Du Bois? Here. Thank you. Let the record show that there are 8 members in attendance. We do have quorum. I would like to entertain a motion for the approval of the October 27th, 2020 minutes that you have received. Thank you, Rosie.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. We have a motion by Mark. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, that was, I'll say motion by Mark, seconded by Jay. Any discussion, changes, review? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carried unanimously. Now for new business. The first order of new business is discussion regarding large solar projects. And I'll let Mark, our Executive Director, Mark Geis, tip this off, please.
Rose, if you want to allow Sarah Mockery, Catherine Hurlman, Scott Thompson, Sean Fox, and Janine Wicken in.
Mark, I think it would be beneficial for Mr. Rapp to hear this as well.
Would you like me to let him in?
Okay. So, welcome E&E WSP folks. We appreciate you joining us today. And this discussion will be led primarily by Sarah. We wanted to have kind of an unbiased kind of overview of large solar projects. E&E WSP are experts in environmental engineering, permitting, environmental impact statements, NEPA. They've been doing it for many, many years. They do it for a range of clients, from developers to state and federal agencies to municipalities, etc. So they're going to spend about 15 minutes kind of talking through at a high level, some of the requirements, pros and cons of these projects. So we're joined by Sarah Mockery, Catherine Hurlman, Scott Thompson, Sean Fox, and Janine Wicken. So thank you very much, Sarah, for doing this for us. So with that, I'll kick it over to you, okay?
Sure. You guys hear me okay?
Yep. Yes.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I appreciate you guys, reaching out and essentially facilitating what I'll call a knowledge share. And Mark summarized it well. The team here is comprised of the legacy folks that were from E&E, which many in Western New York would know E&E's history, but we are now a larger and even more robust firm this past year as WSP. So I brought together what I would call the kind of pillars of resources, these projects as they unfold. There's the regulatory aspects, there's the engineering aspects, there's the stakeholder aspects, and then the overall communication to stakeholders like folks that are in the IDA, where you're just trying to understand more about the landscape that's going on. So we've got a short slide deck that we'll go through. Different folks are going to talk along the way. We're not going to talk for long. The goal here is, knowledge share, and then leave you with some places in the slide deck that are resources you can go to or even send others to. but then also let you know who each one of us is in the event that there's follow-up questions that could cover a range of topics. You know, most everyone here on the phone could likely address any one of the topics that might come up or a question that might come up both now and in the future. And we're available for that if those come up in the future. So, Rosemary, do you have the slides in control?
I do, and I do have it set up, Sarah, where you can share your screen. But if you would prefer I do it, just let me know what the title of the file is. I have a few saved for this particular presentation.
Yeah, there should just be one most recent one that I sent to Mark, and I actually didn't open it. Is it easier for you to share it?
It's the PowerPoint, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Let me just get it up and take just a second. Okay, can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Let me try to make it.
Now, if you want to stop video. So we're just going to go through. Oh, there we go. We'll go through this, and then Rosemary, I'll just tell you when to advance. And we got a couple of handoffs here among our group, and we'll just say next slide, please,
Okay.
and go forward with that. So if you can just advance it to the next one. I'll say this is kind of I'll say it's a commercial just to level everyone knowledge about what we've done in this space and what our resources are. So this is coming from a credible set of experts. Our power expertise is vast, and it's for a long history of projects in New York State and also nationwide across both parts of the spectrum, which I say is working for the regulatory bodies as well as developers in all these different areas: solar, land-based wind and offshore wind, battery storage, hydropower, thermal and bioenergy, slash biomass, and the electrical transmission substations, both and some of the facility design. So if we can go to the next slide, and I'll give you guys a snapshot of where in Western New York and in New York broadly we've done this. There's a lot here, but it really underscores if you guys have questions, that could come in all different forms, or where's all this knowledge that we can share with you coming from. This is the different types of experiences we've had as a team across New York State, working in different types of areas, rural and those that are more urban and more congested, working on things that are emerging with the city and state, on development that's coming across the state, especially with new efforts that are happening with renewables, and then working with the developers as they're trying to understand what is essentially happening with the regulatory landscape in the state and how they're going to implement it and what the expectations are for that development, and then further on into the engineering and design. So if you can go to the next slide. So to Mark's point earlier, this is probably an important thing that I'm sure you've imparted on the community, but every one of these topics is at stake on a large-scale renewables project. It's getting some sort of review and attention, not only once, but throughout the duration of the regulatory process. There's expertise from our team on these efforts across the state, and these are processes that go on for a long duration of time. They involve other agencies within the state and other state and federal agencies as well, not just state resources. Things like threatened endangered species, are engaging things like Fish and Wildlife Service as well as New York State DEC. Those impacts to wetlands and streams are engaging the state, but also the Army Corps of Engineers and some other local resources. And things like agricultural impacts, which we know are important in the community there, are engaging individuals from ag and markets or local bodies in the soil conservation effort done, or even local stakeholders. So it's a point of knowledge to impart, and I'm sure on the stakeholders there in the community, that it isn't just one time and not through one process that projects and their impacts get examined. It's through many processes that go on for sometimes several years. And I'm going to turn it over here to Scott Thompson. So we can talk a little bit about what's on the slide and some things on the next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yes. All right. Rosemary, if you don't mind, I just want to say a few more things on that previous slide. This list of things that get evaluated and considered for a renewable energy project, there are some subtle things that are specific to energy projects, but this list is a pretty standard thing that you would look at for any infrastructure development, whether you were building a road or a shopping mall. And so there's a standard process that we go through. And one thing that I would say that is somewhat unique about renewable energy projects is the thing that drives stakeholder concern is visual impacts. And it's not because the impacts are negative from a technical perspective, but it's because, we as humans, we like to understand our world. And when things change, we have a human nature tendency to want to kind of dismiss those. And so we find that when we engage with stakeholders, that really is what more often than not drives the concern is, well, these solar panels look different than what I'm used to seeing, which are, roads and bridges and utility lines. And so I immediately put up my defense. So we're on the same, we said, for a wind turbine. So those are really when you're interacting with the public, important considerations. Thanks. We can go to the next slide now. And one of the things that is changing very rapidly in the renewable energy field is the use of battery energy storage. And so renewable energy has been around in the U.S. 30 years, but has really ramped up in the last 10 years, making significant strides and now competing on price and competing on installation capacity with conventional fuels. And over the last 2 years, we've really seen a great increase in the rate of deployment of energy storage. And why do we see this? Well, when a thermal power plant operates, it operates in a very steady way, and it makes a lot of pollution as a negative, but the positive is, it's operating steadily. When a renewable energy system operates, it can be intermittent. And so for the grid to receive that power, it has to have a certain robustness. And one way to kind of overcome anything to upgrade the grid is to be able to create a storage to kind of level that flow so that it acts more like a conventional coal plant or a gas-fired power plant. And in this case, you would get a nice steady stream of energy. And so it's a really neat technique. These are very simple systems. They come in containers, and you can kind of just wire them together just like you would any other battery. And it just creates that nice integrated power from renewable energy into a performance that is nice and steady and level that the grid likes to receive. Next slide. Okay, I think Catherine, you're up next.
Hey, good morning, everyone, and thank you for your time. My name is Catherine Hurleman. I'm a senior environmental scientist at WSP. I primarily support our contracts with CCIDA Communities and Local Governments Division. And prior to that, I served as the Regional Clean Energy Communities Coordinator for the Southern Tier. So I assisted Schuyler County, including the town of Dix, navigate the issues and the concerns and the questions that you face, as well as exploring the benefits of these projects with other counties in New York. And what I wanted to point out is that New York solar is new to our area, but it's not new to New York and it's not new to the United States. So one of the things I'm grateful for being a part of WSP is that I've been able to discern what are common public concerns, what are those themes that we see, anticipate those questions so that we're prepared to provide individuals and institutions with timely and accurate information. Generally what we see, and I saw this reflected after viewing the video of the legislature comments that were received from the public, is that there are concerns about public safety, about human health, about site restoration and decommissioning and restoration, as well as compatibility with local land use, like agriculture, that may be defined in local documents like comprehensive plans. So what I wanted to impart onto you is that while New York State agencies, obviously can't address every local concern in the documentation and the trainings that they've already created, there are resources, they're already at your fingertips, which can help you become educated about the decisions that the IDA, the legislature, the towns, and individuals will be making with respect to large-scale solar projects. Next slide, please. I realize this slide is text-heavy. Do not worry about reading it now. I just wanted to give you a quick summary of the resources related to training, local law guidance, pilot development, and common community concerns. One of the questions and the concerns that I saw repeated throughout local comments was that there was no training available for battery energy storage for first responders. So I just wanted to point out that there is in fact a course that is available and accredited by the New York Department of State. And if you email the Clean Energy Siting team, the lead project manager, her name is Jen Manier, her contact information is listed at the bottom of the slide. You can point your fire officials to these workshops. They did circulate across the state in nearly every county in late 2018 to 2019, but I believe that the training schedule was cut short due to COVID. So I would highly recommend that you have your fire officials engage in this training. Also wanted to point out that there are additional trainings for folks who are in your position. Overview of the model battery energy storage law. New York has compiled about 300 pages of incredibly exciting guidance on everything that you need to know to prepare to have a large-scale solar project sited in your community and how you can benefit. Next slide, please. Yeah. So I wanted just to leave you with a few other comments and high-quality, objective scientific papers related specifically to the human health concern, since folks are understandably worried about when they think something's going to leach into the ground or to the groundwater. And I live over in Groton, over in Northeast Ithaca, so I understand these main concerns that folks have, especially folks that are working every day in the soil or enjoying recreation in your area. So I just want to make sure that I left you with some resources that address squarely the solar panel toxicity question. NYSERDA, as well as the National Renewable Energy Laboratory at the Department of Energy, have produced some great, accessible, easily digestible papers that address those human health concerns and show that solar panel component toxicity is not, to our knowledge, in the scientific community, be concerning whatsoever. Next slide, please. And now I'd like to pass it off to my colleague, Jeannie Woodkin.
Hey, I'm Jeannie Woodkin. For background, I've been working on energy projects and a lot of New York State for over 20 years, and even back to when we were doing clean coal. So have been following the regulatory paradigm in New York State under Article 10 and the transition to renewables, including how we interface with the grid in all cases. So I have that regulatory background and the technical background. But for this, wanted to just, for decommissioning, since that has come up a lot with public concerns, it's usually related to how is the land going to be used after, because of the concerns over reuse of ag land or taking ag land out of service. So one of the ways to address concerns about impacts to ag land is what are the regulatory requirements for keeping it functional and putting it back in service. And this requirement is true both under Article 10 and the new proposed ORES regulations. I would say the proposed ORES, Office of Renewable Energy Siting, is going a little bit further in specifying what was done in practice under Article 10 in terms of the financial commitments. But otherwise, you have to put a plan in place at the time of your application to explain the process for testing soils, recycling materials, salvage value, all of that, so that if the site is not continued to be used as a solar facility, then it can return to agricultural use or whatever use the landowner has agreed to. Before we go to the next slide, I did want to say one more thing on the battery storage concept, because I know that has come up a lot in public comments as well. We are currently working for EDF Renewables, who has about 8 projects or more in New York State right now. I'm working on 2 of theirs. Two that are active, one in Jefferson County and one in Cortland County. But they also have a project called Morris Ridge that's, I believe, is Erie County. And it may be helpful to you all that they went through the exact same public outcry over the battery storage system. And what EDF Renewables did was really kind of hit that head on at their public outreach meetings. And it echoed exactly what you all are going through in terms of fire marshals and others concerned because of hearing about one-off conditions that kind of spread literally through the community, the internet, I guess, of concern about battery facilities catching on fire. And so there's county officials and other projects a few counties over that would be available, I think, for you all to talk to about what their experience was with batteries as well. And EDF Renewables is proposing these at many of their projects. So next slide really is also related to concerns that you have heard about the compatibility with ag land. And several of the projects that we are working on for EDF Renewables, this has come up. Erie County, I think, also has a farmland preservation program in the same way that you all do. So we've been making sure that we look at prime farmland as well as mineral soils groups. You may know that the new proposed Office of Renewable Energy Siting regulations are going to mineral soils groups as their quantification for impacts to ag land. And that's a little bit different than prime and drained, etc. So that should help us be more protective of the land. But in a proactive way, what we are looking at with our clients is addressing the types of materials that solar panels are made out of. They're all coated with glass, so the concept of rainwater running off on them and leaching materials is just not occurring, not a likely scenario. And the way that they're made, also the intent is if they were to break, which is also rare, but feasible. They break into pieces that would then be cleaned up automatically, of course. So The hazard is not created from the PV panels being present themselves. Also, you all may already know, just from changes in regulations over the years, the transformers, all the electrical equipment no longer uses PCB oils. That's all vegetable based. So the situations for any solar facility to have hazardous materials or impacts on ag land from hazardous materials are highly unlikely and narrow. There are panels that are made from different materials. It's not every panel in the world that is the crystalline silicon, but the ones used in the U.S. and primarily in New York State are all this material. The other proactive thing that we're aware of a lot from working with our client EDF Renewables, because of their experience in Canada and other parts of the U.S., and it's not unique to them, but they are a good model in terms of promoting use of native vegetation, especially emphasizing pollinators. They're also, it's like some of the public meetings that we've gone to with them have been very proactive in talking with landowners about use of fields for sheep grazing. It really is dependent on what the landowner wants done. If they're comfortable with that, but there are already businesses cropping up to provide those sheep to landowners for this express purpose. So it's getting a good foothold so that we can continue that compatible use. I think that's it.
So, Mark, we really, I guess, wanted to reserve if there was other time here left, given your short agenda, if you guys had specific questions, and also to make sure to hit the mark on giving you something not only that you could hear now, but sources here as a leave behind. And if folks want to do any additional reading or due diligence, there's links in the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you, Sarah and your team. Would the PowerPoint be available to the board members?
Yes, we will send that out to the board members.
Thank you very much. Let me open it up to the board for questions.
Rose, I think you can end the slideshow at this point.
Okay. Any questions from the board members? You've given us a lot of valuable information. We appreciate you and your team. We've received a lot of documents. Thank you, Mark Geitz, for providing us with a lot of materials for us to review and go through and make a qualified decision. Questions from board members?
I have one. And this is probably pretty simple. It's probably been answered before, but I missed it. Do we have enough sunlight in Western New York to make these panels worthwhile? That's one question. And what happens when they get covered with snow? Does someone have to come out there and remove the snow?
You don't know if that's the best one for you, or Scott, if it's one best for you based on productivity. Because I'm sure it's
a little bit of both. Scott, if you want to talk generally about it, and I could talk about the projects I'm working on. Go first.
Yeah, sure. There is absolutely enough solar resource in upstate New York, Western New York. Boy, we're working on solar projects in the Pacific Northwest, and there's enough solar resource there. And so until you go really far north, you start to question the economics. In terms of your question about snow, there's a couple of factors when you're designing them. One is if you are in an area with high snowfall, you will perhaps have the bottom edge of the solar panel a little higher, so that when the snow hits the panels, it will slide off. What happens is As soon as you get a little bit of heat from the sun, you create a thin film of moisture between the snow and the panel, and it just kind of slides right off on the ground. If it starts to accumulate there, you have to then kind of balance whether you send someone out to O&M and remove the snow, or it's just more cost effective to kind of use that production during those heavy snowfall times. And so that's kind of a trade-off. But normally, in a utility scale project, you would undertake snow removal in balance with making sure you have enough area for the pounding.
Thank you.
And if I could just add to that real quick, we talked to Isaac Phillips from ConnectGen last week, and he said that they were required to do a year-long study of the solar resources and to make the case that there was enough solar. And certainly there is, but NYSERDA required that.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, Mark, to Jay's point, the bank requires the bank study for financing. They not only measure the sunlight, they'll measure the pollen amount that falls on the panels, the dust, the wind, the rain. They measure everything to make sure that the bank is comfortable or the equity group is comfortable financing these. They need to be 100% sure there's enough sunlight to make these feasible. So, as Mark said, they do 1 year on the solar panels. For the wind projects, the meteorological powers are probably up at least 4 years gathering data on wind, rain, snow, sleet, all kinds of information. Again, for the bank to be comfortable that to lend money or invest in these projects, the resource will be there when they need it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And over the last decade or so, this has become, even though it's a natural system, sun and wind, it's become a pretty exact science because the investors want to know that they're going to get a steady return. It's exactly right.
Yeah, the wind is far more variable, so that's why the term of the testing is much longer. The solar is pretty consistent from year to year.
Good answer. Thank you.
Good question. Any other questions?
More of a comment than a question. But with these type of projects is that there tends to be a great deal of misinformation and information that's gathered from unreliable sources that tends to propagate itself. So outreach and education on these projects is probably the most critical thing to make them work well. And so anything that we can do to continue the education and on projects like this, I think will make everyone's life a little easier.
Good point.
This is Catherine. I'd just like to add that a wonderful resource you have in your community is Jonathan Neer. He's the Clean Energy Coordinator for your region. He's based out of the Southern Tier West Regional Planning Development Board. Works under Richard Zink, who I'm sure you all know. So if you have any general questions, I highly encourage you to reach out to Jonathan, because even though he's primarily charged with assisting communities with the Clean Energy Communities Program, he also knows a lot about the other NYSERDA teams who are at work, including the Clean Energy Siting team, and a lot about the ORES community engagement staff who can connect you and can schedule trainings, who can have extensive Q&A session, and make sure you have the resources you need to address this information.
Thank you. Any other questions? Well, we have a lot of material to go through, so it's much appreciated. Thank you for taking the time to meet with the board today. Much appreciated. And have a great day. Be safe and well. I just got something. Oh, here are the maps of the solar capacity installed by county. All transparency, work at SUNY Fredonia. We just completed our solar array installation on campus. So I hope it's on that map. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
WSP.
Thank you. You guys all have a good day.
Be safe and well, and have a great holiday.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'm going to move to new business B, the Hanover PV LLC, which is to be presented by Christine and Millen.
Thank you, Mike. The Hanover PV LLC project has been presented before this board twice previously by myself and the developer, John Rapp of RIC Development LLC, and John is with us today. At the October IDA board meeting, we reviewed the public hearing transcript, including the one written comment received from the public pertaining to this project. At that meeting, the seeker resolution was also passed. We have continued through the agency's due diligence process, and today before you, we have a deviation resolution and a final resolution. Deviation notices were distributed to the affected taxing jurisdictions by U.S. mail and email with an invitation to participate in this meeting or provide written comment. To recap, the project includes new construction of a 5-megawatt solar farm on 31.14 acres leased from Rattlesnake Enterprises, which is owned by Steve Bello, located at 1321 routes 5 and 20 Silver Creek in the town of Hanover. The project will be located at the rear of a 45-acre parcel, leaving the front 12 acres of frontage available for retail or commercial development. The landowner has actively marketed this vacant land for development for over 10 years. The request for pilot tax lease incentives includes a real property tax abatement for a period of 12 years, sales tax abatement for 1 year, and mortgage recording tax abatement. There are projected to be 30 construction jobs and 0.5 permanent jobs in connection with the project. The landowner, and together more recently with RIC Energy, has worked with the town of Hanover over the past 15 months to develop the project here. In response, the town passed a solar zoning law in June of this year, and the town has requested that the CCIDA conclude its approval process now, and according to Town Supervisor Todd Johnson, anticipates passing their approval in December. Melon, would you like to review the resolutions?
Thank you. I'd be happy to do so. Christina, I want to, I think, correct one thing that you said. The pilot is for 25 years.
Oh, I may have misspoke. That's what I had written down. What did I say?
Okay. I don't know. Maybe I heard 12, but anyway, let's be clear.
No.
It's 25 years. So I guess the first order of business, if I may, Mr. Chairman, is the public, deviation hearing. So I guess I would just ask if there's any members of any affected tax jurisdiction who would like to be heard on the topic of the proposed deviation from its UTEP.
Lisa Roloff was on the waiting list, but she has since disconnected.
Okay, well, let's officially open the deviation hearing, and then see if there's any members of the public that would like to. I'm looking through Rosie. Oh, I lost Rosie. I'm looking through to see if any pop up.
No, there's no one else.
There's no one else.
No one else.
Thank you, Rosie. Then I guess we can close the deviation here. Is that correct, Noah?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Please continue.
Then there are two resolutions. Again, as the board probably recalls, we typically do this in one step. We would be secret, deviation, and the final approving resolution. And at last meeting, staff recommended to the chairman to give the board members a little more time to digest the due diligence that they had, to review a memo that the executive director subsequently prepared and distributed on large solar, and to do this after the board had an opportunity to hear from E&E, that we put off the deviation and final approving resolution, and that was done. So that brings us to today. So there are two resolutions. We passed the secret resolution already, and nothing has changed in the project that would require a new secret resolution. So the deviation resolution is, as Christine mentioned, 25 years, $5,000 per megawatt, which I think is what your last couple have been, and 2% annual increases. Deviation notice went out, and I don't believe there have been any comments from any of the tax jurisdictions. And the second resolution would be the final approving resolution, which would authorize the board to go ahead and close this transaction under the terms that we previously discussed.
Thank you, Millen. Can I ask Dennis if you could please move new business B1?
Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but I will move new business B1 if that's sufficient.
That's sufficient. It's the Hanover PD LLC pilot deviation approval resolution. Resolution 11-17-2001. Do I have a second? Second. I have a motion by Dennis and a second by Steve. Further discussion? Not seeing anyone. Pardon?
Mr. Chairman, do I have something to say?
No, please, Mark.
Thanks, Mr. Geitz and the staff. Thank you for getting E&E involved. As we know, we had discussions last week. So Planning and Economic Development Committee, which was productive too, and unfortunately he was not able to participate. So again, I hope a lot more of this information that was presented today can get disseminated. As was stated, education outreach is key with this. And just again, for the record, I'm not against renewable energy projects. I've been designing these for decades, heavy integrations, even championed our Clean Energy Communities program through 930 here. And that was a great respect to Catherine Hurlman, who spoke earlier today, as one of the original coordinators there in the Southern Tier. So it's not an easy task, and we're pleased to do that. But, basically, gang, I feel that the existing and potential subsidies, tax breaks, are really huge in comparison to any potential long-term employment or economic gains here in Chautauqua County. These types of projects. I'm not against the technology by any means. Renewables are great, but it's the subsidies and breaks I'm against. But I can support fully a lot of the great work that we've done in the past, where I think our IDA board really shines, like the North County Wells expansion, New Ice Cream, a freezer warehouse. Those are great projects for us in the South. Lawson Marine, Ulster Roll Forum, the bathymetric study of the Chattacoin. That's great work that I can really champion with our IDA board, but just not so much on these renewables. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your comments. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote, please. Mike Metzger votes aye. Gary Henry?
Aye.
Hans Sauer? Hans Sauer?
Giving you the thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
He's on mute. He's on mute.
He's on mute. Okay. Mark Odell?
No.
Stephen Thorpe?
Aye.
Jay Churchill?
Aye.
Thank you. Dennis Rand?
Aye.
Kelly Farrell Du Bois?
Aye.
Thank you. Let the record show that there are 7 votes in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Motion carried. If Gary Henry, if you could please move new business B2.
I move resolution 11-17-20-02 Hanover PV LLC final resolution.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by, it looks like motion by Gary, seconded by Stephen. Any further discussion? So funny to say seeing none instead of hearing none. I will call for a roll call vote, please. Mike Metzger votes aye. Harry Henry?
Aye.
Hans Sauer?
Aye.
Thank you. Mark Odell?
No.
Stephen Thorpe?
Aye.
Jay Churchill?
Aye.
Dennis Scragg?
Aye.
Kelly Farrell DeVoit?
Aye.
Let the record show that there are 7 votes in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. Motion carried. I just want to mention that we're going to be skipping we won't have the treasurer's report today, but we will be going into executive session. So let me move to the next item on the agenda, which is the executive director's report and CEO update. Mark, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to talk very long. We have obviously a long meeting here, but I did want to inform the IDA board that, the legislature, the county legislature is contemplating amending the resolution that was passed in 2018 that urges the IDA not to approve pilots for large wind farms. They're amending it to include solar, or contemplating amending it to include solar projects greater than 5 megawatts. So I don't know when that might occur, but it might be December. But I spoke at the PED meeting last week, basically summarized the memo that I sent out to the board about what the regulatory requirements are at all the different levels and what the pros and cons are, trying to be very level and balanced in the presentation. Last night I sent out an email from ConnectGen that was in response to Brad Walter's questions. Brad asked about the cost of electricity generated by solar, and he basically concluded that it's less than the levelized cost of coal or gas. And also he had a question about what is planned versus the actual generation of energy in these projects. And ConnectGen again stated that there was really no difference because they do this 1-year on-site solar resources data study, and that they're basically bound to deliver what they promise. So that's that. What else? Mark Odell had asked about us doing a pre-op or a post-op, if you will, for the Portland E2Y Ventures project. And that was a 200 kilowatt, which is 1.5 acres. That's small solar. But we have not gotten back the information yet, Mark. So we're working on that. We hope to have some response by December.
I get that, Mark, and Christine, for all the hard work on that. Plus, for being on the forum last week, it was discussion, and I think it's productive. It's contentious. So, again, more information we can get out there, the better it'll be.
Thanks, Mark. And I don't know, Rose, did we send out the ConnectGen brochures yet? I may have said to hold on to those, or did we send those out to the board?
I have not.
Okay. So you will all be getting in the coming days, it's a 20-plus page brochure that ConnectGen created about the Ripley Solar project. So we'll get that out to you. Of course, I sent out a memo to the board regarding the regulatory compliance, pros and cons of large solar. And one last thing I wanted to state is that we'll have to see what we do with our office staff. I want to see what happens with, or we want to see what is going to happen with the COVID-19. And we may have to go back to some level of working more from home. But right now we're doing a fair share of working from the office, and we're being very careful. But I just wanted you to know that we'll take that as it comes, and we'll see what we may need to change things. So I don't know. That's really all I had. I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments.
Please err on the side of safety and caution, which I know you will. Any questions for Mark?
Mike, this is Rich. I'm at home. You don't want to see me. I've got shingles, so I'm going to be home for a little bit here. But Mark talked about the electrical update from the developers. Rosie has a couple documents. Rosie, can you put the one up from Arkwright Summit about their debriefing about the progress?
Is it called the fact sheet or the AWW? Yeah. Okay. Give me just a second.
Yeah, thanks for remembering that, Rich.
Yeah, I remember that at least.
Well, we wish you well and a speedy recovery, Rich.
Can everyone see that?
Yeah. Can you scroll down, Rosie, to the fact sheet?
Sure.
So this is a 78, go up just a little higher, please. Just a little higher. So stop. So it's a 78 megawatt project. Of the 3 projects that the IDA board has approved, this was the smallest one. We have a 78 megawatt. Casadega Wind Farm, which we'll talk about in a minute, is 120 megawatt. And the Ball Hill project, which has just recently been bought by Northland Power, is 100 megawatt. So again, to the question we had about, is the project producing what it was supposed to? And the answer there is yes. Again, they knew what going into this, how much electricity would be produced because of all the studies they've done. But it's generating enough power to power 33,000 New York State homes. It represented an investment of $125 million. Through 2019, not counting this year's payments, they have paid $780,000 in cumulative payments to the local government. That's the pilot payment and the host agreement. So that money was split between the town, the county, and the school. In addition to that, through 2019, after 2 years of operation, the landowners have received over $1 million in payments for the lease of their land. They created 80 full-time equivalent jobs during construction and 3 permanent jobs after the life of the project. And while it's not a large job creator, they don't put a lot of strain on the public utilities, the infrastructure, or the school system, the fire department, or whatever. So it is a win that one. They spent $4.6 million within 50 miles of the project through 2019, just buying things locally, taking care of hiring people locally. And Bloomberg and New York State Energy Research and Development Authority received energy from the Arkwright Summit. So they have a power purchase agreement with those 2 entities that are buying power. Go down, Rosie, please. They talk here about how they're saving water, about how it's compatible with farming. Please go down a little more. So that's their debrief on that project. Rosie, you also had an email that I had sent. That was an email from Leah Grossman. Put that document up, please.
Yep, I have a few. Could you give me the title of that particular?
It was the 2 that I sent you. It was an email about Casadega from Leah Grossman and me. Just put it up. I can tell you if it isn't.
Okay, give me 1 second.
Anyway, I'm just going to start on that. I know time is valuable here for people, but Mark and I and Kayla started to visit. That's not it.
Okay, give me.
Mark and I and Kayla went up and visited this project here about 4 weeks ago. The day we were there, they had 282 full-time equivalents working at the site, 60% of them being local employees. Like the solar farms, the wind farms require a lot of expertise. There's 6 wheel cranes in the world, actually, and one of them is on the Arkwright job, and they're run by the Irish crew. So there are 40. That's not it either. It's an email, Rosie. It's run by an Irish crew. We're staying in the local hotels, eating here and that. So that's the economic impact of that project. Casadega has already made their first pilot payment. $504,000. We collected and distributed to the local taxing jurisdictions, the county, and the school, and the town. And the project isn't even completed yet, so they agreed to pay their pilot up front. Can't find it, Rosie?
No, well, I saved all the attachments you sent me so that I wouldn't pull my email up on the screen.
I've got it in front of me. I apologize. So they, like we talked about, 280 construction jobs. They made payments to the town of $37,000 before they started construction. The town will receive $14 million alone. The town of Arkwright will get $14 million over 25 years. The landowners, through the start of construction, have received $1.7 million in payments. Payments to the landowners during operation for the 25 years is over $21 million. And payments to the county during operations year 1 through 20 is $11.6 million. And I think they're as confident as that they will be producing as much power as they said, especially they've all done.
Yeah, he stated that 60% of those 280 construction workers are local. And when he said, and the local means within a 50-mile radius of the site.
So the only other thing I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman, is that, you know, when Amazon didn't get called into Grand Island, Mark and I were inundated. Legislators were calling us. Everybody was calling us, you know, to try to get Amazon here. And I think what an unfortunate message we would be sending as a county if we blanketly rejected large solar and large wind projects. I'm going to read you some companies that through 2019 receive 100% of their electric through green power, and that's through power purchase agreement. Google, Microsoft, Intel, Apple, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Starbucks, Cisco. Let's see, Goldman Sachs, Bank of New York, Netflix, TD Bank, HP, American Express, State Street Corporation. Amazon purchased currently 42% of their power is green power from solar and wind, with the goal of being by the year 2025, 100%. Covers one of our largest employees. The goal to get to 100%. We're currently at 43% renewables. And people do read the Post Journal. People do read the paper. They see these types of things that would be blanketly passed. And I just can't tell you how much damage that will do if the county legislature goes ahead and moves this. So that's my 2 cents for the day.
Well, thank you, Rich, and we wish you well. And
Thanks,
thank you especially for, I know it's difficult to even be on this call for you, so thank you very much. Actually, do we have any business to move to executive session for?
No.
No? Okay. All right, hearing that, do we have any business to come before this morning? No? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for your attendance and your excellent volunteer service, and the staff for their tremendous efforts for putting together all these projects, and our council who stayed with us through thick and thin these projects, so thank you. Our next CCIDA board meeting is December 15th, 2020 at 10 a.m. That also will be a Zoom meeting. And I want to especially thank Rosie for being in the command center and working through all these technical difficulties. So thank you all, and I wish you a very safe and well holiday season, and we'll see you on the 15th of December. Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Are we good, Rosie?
You're all set. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll be sending those over to you right now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Those documents.